What's up, fam? It's Randy B. Woo! Let me tell y'all, yesterday I was conducting one of my seminars about systemic racism, and I cried for the first time. Now, I have been in the EDI field for over 2 decades, and I deal with tough subjects, but yesterday I shed tears during my seminar. Completely unprofessional. I was absolutely embarrassed, but I just couldn't just stand it. So I'm talking to some employees. It's at night because these employees are furloughed. So for legal reasons, my client has to train the employees that are furloughed during the evening time, can't do it during work hours. And we were talking about systemic racism, and we're having a conversation because, I always believe it's right to have a conversation. That's where we learn the most. And this white woman shared that her husband is Chinese American and he has not been walking with her. They usually walk every evening for exercise, and he has not been walking with her for the last 9 months because he's so afraid of being accosted, the way Asian Americans have been accosted since the leader of our country titled the coronavirus the Chinese virus, which I knew was just going to do terrible things and damage. And then another woman spoke who is from Vietnam originally, and she said, of course, when she immigrated to America many years ago, it felt somewhat foreign, and Vietnam would feel like home when she would visit. But over time, she would visit Vietnam, and Vietnam didn't feel like home anymore because she felt very American. But she said now Vietnam doesn't feel like home, of course, because she's lived in America so long, but America doesn't feel like home either. And she feels homeless. And that was the story that just made me just start tearing up and crying, because I wrote an essay called Homeless about that exact feeling, not really quite feeling like I belong where I should. And I don't want anybody to feel that way. And so I have been posting, before this, I had been posting a few things on social media showing my solidarity with the Asian community. And I've had some people make some negative comments that I want to address because they really kind of are annoying me. I understand that our relationship within groups hasn't always been great. You may even have personal stories. You may have had a shop that was owned by Korean Americans or that didn't treat you well in your neighborhood, and it was a big issue. But that doesn't speak for every Asian person. First of all, understand. And that's what's so ridiculous. And that's why it's interesting that although Trump titled this flu the Chinese virus, everyone, because Americans are so ignorant and refuse to educate ourselves, anyone that we see that looks Asian just becomes Chinese. So it's the entire population is targeted, not just Chinese people, which just shows how small-brained we all are. But also what shows how small-brained we are is that we don't understand inter-minority racism. This is what this is, what's happening. So an inter-minority racism is honestly a beautiful, by beautiful, I mean powerful tool that serves white supremacy. So when you show hatred against Asian Americans or a lack of empathy toward Asian Americans, I want you to be very clear that you are serving a white supremacist agenda, because it's very helpful to them if minorities fight amongst each other, right? Because white supremacy sells the idea that white people with white skin are superior to people with darker skin, right? And so if you can make the minorities fight amongst themselves and fight to get to be closest to being accepted, to assimilating with white people, then they can always stay in power. They can always be supreme because we minorities are fighting amongst each other for second place. That's dumb, right? That's not real smart. But it's been set up brilliantly that we believe the enemy is not white supremacy. The enemy is not racism, but the enemy are other minorities that for the most part are in the same position as us. Doesn't mean you haven't had some people that have treated you badly, because guess what? You've had some people with your own identity group that have treated you badly. But just like black people don't want to be judged on a couple black people that have done bad things, because that's discriminatory, that's where our pain comes from. We shouldn't want anybody else to either. We should be the most empathetic people that exist on this planet. The most empathetic people. And don't come to me and say, well, they weren't there for me. You don't know. They may not have been there for you, or you may not have seen them at a protest, but it doesn't mean that people haven't been supported by people outside of the black community. Doesn't mean that you can, even if you think that you'd be doing more than somebody else, hey, maybe just do better. But what I will say is that as much as I love my black people, y'all know I love my blackness. I mean, I believe that getting to love yourself in America as a black person, as a person that's a minority, as a person who, regardless of your sexual orientation, your religion, anything that loves themselves other than white, is a journey. I think it's hard. I think some of us had to work to get here. So I absolutely love my blackness, my womanness. Be clear. But I hate racism, okay? And I love all people. So my black love doesn't mean hate to anything else except for racism. And I want that to be that way for everybody. Or if not, we're part of the same problem, right? It is supposed to be us against racism overall, us against racism. And what I suggest for people who wrote these negative comments is maybe find your why. I do EDI training all the time and consulting, and I try to help organizations create environments where people feel included and valued regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation, ableness, age, etc. But the one answer that could solve their problems and they wouldn't have to hire me, which, I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. But the fastest way people can fix the problem is find their person, find their why. Find that person that allows you, that challenges your stereotypes, that challenges your groupthink, where you're applying a set of characteristics to one group. Find your person. Find your Gina Yee, my girl, who Korean American, who I met as a first-year teacher in Arlington, Virginia, Wakefield High School. And she taught art and I taught English, and that is my girl. She has ridden with me through the best of times, like at my first book launch, to my worst of times, my mother's funeral. And regardless if she had to be the only non-black person in the room, she was there. That's my girl. And so she's why. She's who I see. It's her kids that I see when I'm hearing people don't feel comfortable taking walks with their spouses. It's her kids that I imagine going to school that could be humiliated, teased, bullied. Find your Gina Yee. I have more than one Gina Yee. Find your person that challenges your stereotypes and makes you more loving, because that's what y'all need to be. But understand, I'm there. I love people. I don't want anybody discriminated against. I get no joy out of anybody made to feel as if they are homeless or they're isolated or alienated. So if that's what you're looking for from me, as much as I celebrate my blackness, you got the wrong one, y'all. And I'm fine with you unfriending, unfollowing, unlistening, whatever. What I suggest is you start some unlearning. And start meeting and associating with people who challenge your hate and make your heart more open. This is Randy B. It's truly time for a conversation.